Good morning, everybody. How are we doing? Getting there? No? Cold? Isn't the sun cold? You're not from the North Island? No. Oh, Nelson. My name's Kevin, and my job is Field Director with Bright Hope, and I'm here to talk a little bit about sustainability in the field. If you look at your program, I'm going to do a bit of a blurb, basically sharing a few stories about some of our partners, answering 2 or 3 questions that Fraser's given me to answer. And then Jerry's going to come up and talk to us about one of our partners in Zambia, and Chaba. And Mark's going to come up and talk about another partner in Thailand. And then we're going to have, I'm going to talk about another couple of partners, go a little bit deeper with them. And then we're going to have a bit of a group discussion. So that's going to take the next little while. Please feel free to interrupt us as we go along. Ask questions. Feel free to clap. That was for all the guys before. Well done. I was just saying to some guys down there, Rob and I can die now. That's pretty cool.
Don't do that on us.
We won't do it here. One of the things I'm noticing about our field facilitators that's pretty important is that most of them get pregnant. I'm fully insured against it, but a couple of them are not here, well, 3 of them are not here this weekend because of that. And so we just want to think of, particularly Mike and Becky, a baby about to emerge. Mike and Becky are Kenya facilitators, and Peter's come down, Granddad has come down to represent the family, and may disappear if it's a phone call. Let me pray. Father, we just want to give this next few minutes to you as we chat about what you're doing in the world. Thank you for great people out there with a vision to transform their communities. Thank you for bringing them into our network as well. We bless you for them. Thanks for this time to share together. In Jesus' name, amen. Part of my role right now as field director is to focus on developing new partnership opportunities as facilitators pick up and take over various fields. And we've heard some of them this morning, and you'll meet a few others as you spend the weekend here. And as I go around and start looking for new partnerships and new partners, I've had to crystallise my thoughts a little bit as we look for those people. What are we looking for in a sense? What type of people? So, for example, some of the guys have been saying, we need to be able to kind of start with the end in mind, and then that type of thing. It's not always that easy. So you have to have a fairly clear idea about what you're looking for as you go along. And so what I'm going to do in this first part of the session is really just take a number of our partners and talk about one thing that I observed from their partnership and from engaging with them and from getting to know them over a period of time. And as I kind of meet these people, get to know them, and then get the opportunity to talk to people in various parts of the world, in the Western world, donors, there's a heck of a lot we can learn from our partners. Things that, for some reason, when you meet them and you see the stuff in them, it kind of really hits you much harder than if you're seeing that in people in your own culture. I don't know what it is, but that seems to happen. And so, as I go through this, I'm not just thinking about them and what they're doing. I'm trying to think about how does that impact me? What are they modelling that I need to know, or that would be useful for me in my situation and in my Christian walk. So the first question is that Fraser's given me to look at is, what is it about our people that makes them sustainable? So what is it that they're doing? what is it about the way they think about ministry that that makes what they're doing go on into the next generation and impact the next generation? And so I want to just tell you a few stories, introduce you to a few people. Pick the next one up there, phrase. The first thing I want you to think about, or I get confronted by, is they serve out of deep conviction. Love, compassion, empathy, that type of thing. They don't just respond to needs. And I think this is something that we in the West have to learn pretty clearly, is that this type of thing, if you're just responding to a need, it's not sustainable, because the needs change. A more pressing need will come along. Somebody else will tell you a different story. And so in the West, often that's what happens. These people go into a community, they insert themselves into that community, and they stay there for long periods of time. And I want to talk to you a little bit about George and Jacqueline. They put themselves in the picture. They're a lovely little family. But they've been through hell. Back in the early 2000s, they became refugees from out of the Congo. Their family members were butchered. They fled through Uganda and into Kenya, where they met one of our other partners, who took them in and kind of just helped them stabilise. So while they were there as refugees, they weren't allowed to work. George became a doctor in theology and then chose to go back to Congo. Could have gone anywhere. His doctorate is from Glasgow University. African scholars are now worth a lot. People want them because they are approaching things, thinking about things differently than most of the Western theologians. They come from a different mindset perspective. And so the guys like George are worth a lot of money. You could get tens of thousands of dollars going to work in the UK or the US, but he chooses to go back there and put himself in the game, put his skin in the game, insert his family into a pretty difficult place for the sake of his people, and that challenges me. They go there out of conviction. They're not just there because it's the easy thing to do. They can be empathetic because they've been there, it's happened to them, they know what it's like. And we can't do that in Congo. How many of you have been a refugee? I mean, some of our partners have been refugees, particularly one, Thomas, by the time he was 18, South Sudanese, had been a refugee 3 times. By the time he was 18 years old, he took off, got chased out of South Sudan, got into Uganda, and Idi Amin come along, back across the border into South Sudan, stayed there for a few years, father killed, chased back out again, back to Uganda. I mean, by the time you're 18, and yet he's now a partner impacting. In fact, right now he's just training 100 people in Foundations for Farming. We got the email this week in South Sudan and northern Uganda. And so, these people, they do it out of conviction. They don't have to do it, but they do it. And that conviction is not just because of their culture, it's because of a real passion to follow Jesus and to go where he wants them to be. And so, people like George and Jacqueline are pretty impressive in terms of this whole issue of serving out of conviction. And that's a lesson, I think, for us as churches, particularly as church leaders, how much of our mission global engagement is based on conviction. Are we doing this because it's biblical, or are we doing this because it's just, the easiest thing to do, or the other mega churches are doing it? Well, that's come out of another incident we're grappling with at the moment, or because that's what other people are doing. Are we just following the trends and fads that are going on within the mission world? For example, a few years ago it was popular to do water. Everybody was doing water. Then it changed, then it was sex trafficking. And then it's like, what's the next trend that's coming along? Refugees is the latest one. And so, we jump into that. then another issue comes along, so we jump into that and we leave that one behind. And so it's a really important thing, that diagram that Fraser had up there last night, that we go from relief to rehabilitation to development and to advocacy. It's really important to understand that, because those time frames related to those various stages of development, they're dictated to us. We can't change that. We can't change the fact that it takes generations for advocacy to really kick in. The problem is, as I observe it, is that many churches, well, particularly churches, want to jump in and change things. They want to say, okay, let's deal with sex trafficking, let's throw millions of dollars at it and solve the problem. The trouble is, you can't fast track the time frames that are required. And so they jump in there, they do all this stuff for 3 years or 5 years, task-orientated, time-bound. Oh man, it's just... And they leave and they go on to the next fad. And you need to understand who you are as a church to put yourself on that continuum. Are we a church that's short-term or long-term orientated? And so, one of the issues we face is that a number of churches will come along and want to engage with us. But they want a quick fix, they want a task-orientated, time-bound project to finish and be able to move on from, but it fits over here where it's actually going to take decades, not months, And so there's a disconnect. And, for these people, and we'll see with some others as well, are doing it out of conviction, not just because of need or it's the latest trend. The next thing, and feel free to ask questions about this as well, if you want to. The next one is, you met them earlier, Simon and Anna in Uganda. My point about them is that they are embedded in the community, they're stakeholders. These are their people. They know what the issues are, they understand it from the inside out. And that's a reason why what they do is sustainable, because they're not coming in from the outside with an external solution. Their solution has grown up within them, and it's affected and influenced by all of the people that they're dealing with and ministering to. And particularly with these guys, it started with their family. And some of you may have heard of the Lord's Resistance Army. And so in the early 2000s, Anna's father was murdered and tortured by the LRA, and 27 of his grandchildren who were living with him, grandchildren and some of his grandchildren's friends, were captured by the LRA, or chased into the bush and scattered through northern Uganda up into South Sudan. Anna, particularly Anna's sister Penina, chased after them and found them, and if you've met Penina, you do not want to be chased by Penina. I'm sure Joseph Coney was very afraid. And she found every 27 of them and brought them together into a refugee camp. That's where we found them. Phil Field found them there, and we grabbed them out of there, and since then these guys have got involved. But that's grown. The 27 kids, many of them are now older, some of them are educated, some of them have left the family home that's been created there, but how many? 4 new loan programs, dozens of widows have been impacted by this couple as they have just gone along with the vision that God's given them from inside their community. And the great thing is that it hasn't just stayed in their family, it's gone out into many other vulnerable and poor families, particularly widows. And so they're stakeholders in the outcomes. If this doesn't work, they're stuck. And so they just are right in there, making it happen. One of the things I've noticed as I look at many of our partners is I can't think of one of our partners where if we left tomorrow, where it wouldn't carry on. I can't think of one. It would be different. Some of them would struggle because we're in the early stages of set up and some of that. But they're doing this before we arrive. They're doing it anyway. And if we weren't there, then they would still be doing it, because this is their family. This is their community, this is their people. And because of that, this day, it's who they are. It's not just what they do. So, what is it about our people that makes them sustainable? The third one I'll just suggest to you is that they're multidimensional. They're not just doing one thing. And it's largely that they may start with one thing, but as they get to understand their community and their people, and we go the journey with them, it branches out into a much broader thing than just the one dimension that maybe they started with. But they all have this multi-dimensional capacity. These guys are, I mean, we talked a little bit about them last night, and I'm going to focus on them in a few minutes at the end of this session. But they've got all sorts of things going, as you'll see later. They've got a church planting movement with over 130 churches. I went there at one stage and there were 19. I went back 9 months later and there were 70. And that's apart from all the other people in the other denominations that they've trained as well. These are just the churches that have decided they want to hook up with Narangin. They're doing that by training trainers, by training leaders. And so they've got this network of trainers all over the country operating. There's a whole bunch of stuff. And then the earthquake comes. And they get involved in the lives of those people. But we don't give any money to them. He's set up a travel agency. He takes Nepali people to Thailand and other parts of Southeast Asia. And he makes a little bit of a cut. He's got shares with his stuff. I mean, these guys have this big picture in mind. They're not just focused on one thing. They have this capacity to grow out into areas that make them self-sustaining. They don't need us to support them. And that's why I say, if we were to move away, we already have moved away from this one, by the way. We're not putting any money in there now. And it's just going gangbusters. One place I went there, they decided they wanted to start a cooperative for farmers in this little rural community. The church there I went to, it had 6 people in it. Nobody in the community ever noticed the church until Narangin went along and started a farmers cooperative. So I went in there and we talked about it, looked at it, and they set up a model farm and went back 18 months later, 300 farmers in the cooperative. We funded a second-hand rice mill. I went back after 18 months, they had a brand new commercial-sized rice mill and new tractors that they had bought because of all the savings they'd made and the increase in production they had. And guess what? The church was now 70 or 80 people, and the chairman of the local community was one of the local Christians. And so in this Hindu community, starting a farming cooperative changes the lives of hundreds of people and gives them the opportunity to hear about Jesus at the same time. So, pretty cool to get that kind of stuff happening. I'm going to skip the next one really quickly because of time, but I will refer to them. James and Wire in Uganda. They're people focused, not project orientated. I just don't know where to go with these guys. They're very impressive. Goret was being asked to be a member of parliament, and he was voted into the local council because of her influence in the community, because of the loan scheme she set up there. Many loan schemes have been attempted in that area and either failed or the guys have run off with all the money. But they're part of this community. What I love about them is that they've got all this stuff going. Education programs, loan schemes. You want to go to the bank, it's under the biggest mango tree you've ever seen on a Saturday morning. People come and the money comes in and it goes out. Very, very simple. But they come across this community way up in the north of Uganda. And so in a sense they drop everything and they move towards that community. And now there's a school operating in that area for kids that never went to school. A well is just about to go into that community where people were walking kilometres to get water. It's an arid part of the world. This is in the Karamajong area where cattle raiding and rustling goes on. People are killed every year in tribal clashes because of cattle. But these guys have kind of, well, why wouldn't we go there? And in the midst of all of these people that are coming and going, they see a little girl who's deaf and dumb. Make sure she gets to a proper school for deaf and dumb kids. So they see the individual, not just the masses. They're not just into putting a program in and keeping it going. They move towards the small ones, the individual, the people. And I think I just learned so much from that as I'm involved in the leadership of the church. I'm also going to skip the next one. I've just been there in Pakistan with them. They've got a number of things going there. But Edward's only 30, just turned 30 years of age. Set up a whole bunch of stuff. But he's now been asked to help in the interfaith dialogue with Muslims as a Christian church pastor. And so now he has the opportunity to influence at a level that not many 30-year-olds I know would be able to do. Yeah, just pretty impressive what's happening there. They understand the context. They don't just start a program, they start a movement. And I think of many of our partners, that's kind of, it's in there as part of who they are. The next thing, I want to go to the pig pastor, Subon in North India. He's holistic. He gets the connection between the gospel and poverty. They understand that innately. They don't have to have it explained to them. Where in the West we are very good at dividing those two things. Separating them, in fact, from my background, separating them along. There's no connection left at all. He gave up his role as a pastor of a very large church. I mean, I'm talking 700 or 800 people in North India. Well supported the pastors there. He gave it up to start a little pig farm. Now they all call him the pig pastor. So he gets invited to all the pig meetings all around Nagaland. And if you've ever been to Nagaland, you have to be able to eat pork fat. Actually, they breed them so fat there, they throw the meat away and just eat the fat. But yeah, he's got right into this thing, and now there are hundreds of these little pig farmers associations around the place that come to visit him at his farm and to see how to raise pigs well. Owen will be very happy about this because he loves pig fat. No, he was involved in helping set this one up as well. And it's just going on and on and on, getting bigger and bigger. Yeah, pretty impressive. But he gets this holistic nature. He's talking about pigs and Jesus in the same breath, in the same conversation. How do you do that? But he gets that. Go to the next slide there, Fraser. People often ask, where do our partners live? And it's easy. It would be easy to go straight to a geographical location. But this is where our people live, where the gospel meets poverty. And they are able to insert themselves in there and just very naturally get involved in both. Of course, one of the challenges for us is that we don't just preach to people, but we engage in their lives. And I'll tell you something, that if you are serious about the gospel, you will inevitably find yourself amongst the poor. Just the way it is. Jesus said that, didn't he? You always have the poor. He said, no, that's just the way it is. Then he preached his first sermon. What did he say? I've come to, Luke chapter 4, preach the gospel to the poor, oppressed, blind, those in prison. Yeah, that's why he came. So, big pastors, not bad. And the last one of this, to answer this question, is Tiraja and Devi, his wife. It's not their job, it's their lifestyle. This is so important, and it's part of this is inherent in all of our people. They're not getting paid for doing this. It's just like, this is who they are. Oh, how we need this in the West. Yeah. I'd love to have a few of our pastors understand this one too. Okay, so answering that question, there's a few of our friends. How does who they are affect the longevity and impact of what they do? I'm going to just pull out a few words and tell you about a few people here. The first word I'm going to use is authenticity. Authenticity takes a long time to develop. It's not something you decide to do one day and you've got it the next. These guys in Zimbabwe were living in their community for 10 years before the community started to come to them and said, we want you to lead what's happening in our community in terms of development, foundations for farming, education, caring for kids. I took this photo of Gideon and Jennifer, but Jennifer shot the gap just as I was about to pull the trigger on the camera. So she's not even in there because they just got an urgent message for her to run down the road and pick up an 8-year-old girl who'd just been raped by her family members. And so there was another one, their family just grew by one that day, or in that few seconds that I was trying to take the photo. And so the community rings them and says, you're the people we go to. You're the ones that we want. Now, that doesn't happen overnight. That happens over a long period of time. Like I said, 10 years in this community. Now, the first 10 years in one community, in the last 2 years we've been involved with them. 2 more communities have said, we want you in our community, to lead our community. And so, off they go. So, authenticity is the first one. The second one are these 2 words, resilience and tenacity. And Fraser used the word resilience last night. What does it mean? What is resilience?
The ability to recover from challenges or issues.
Yeah, bounce back. And tenacity, when you put it with that, that's that patience and commitment and stickability and in there. I mean, this guy had a vision to start a school to generate income in Ethiopia. It took him 4 years to get the piece of land God promised to him. I would have been gone after 4 months. All the rubbish he had to face to get it, and the corruption, the people that tried to steal it from him, and the officials that when they heard of his vision tried to take the land off him and the donors. Just incredible odds, but he just bounces back, he just comes back again. It's like that old song when we were little kids, the cat came back the very next day. He thought he was a goner, but he wouldn't stay away. Just keep coming back, just keep coming back, just keep at it. That's what's required. I kind of wonder at the strength, the commitment that's required for that kind of tenacity. The next one is integrity. Integrity in the short term is often a threat to a community. We see this in a number of our partners. They get huge opposition, not because they're bad or corrupt, but because they show up the rest of the community and the leaders in the community because of their integrity. I haven't put a photo up there, but the Rahab guys have faced all sorts of trouble in Thailand because of their integrity. Because they're trying to do it right, they're trying to do it well. Everybody in the community is trying to knock them down because they're a threat to their livelihood. So the Rahab guys were running a beauty salon. So in the next floor on the building, the brothel owners open up a beauty salon. it just goes on, and all sorts of pressure comes back at them. So integrity is a really important part of the whole deal. And then two more in terms of this one. Suffering and sacrifice. That produces something. I think of my friends Leonard and Rosemary. Leonard died a couple of years ago in Zambia. Just those verses in John 12, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. This is now sustainability. But if it dies, it produces a great harvest, much fruit. And it requires sustainability at this level, requires people like that who will go and just live there. He was an engineer in the railways, and she was worked in an office. And they chose, I knew these guys for nearly 30 years now. They chose to go and live in this community. It was their community. There were no churches in this area. They chose to go live there, embed their lives in there, and implant themselves and die there. And I wonder, just every time I go there, every time I see this photo of Leonard and his smile, the generosity and joy that comes out of the suffering that those guys went through to plant churches in that area. It's very stimulating. And then the last one, incarnation. Tiraja. This is a little phrase from an email I got from him recently, just after we'd been there visiting him last year. His mother wandered off and left the little baby there with them, and so now this little life is our responsibility. Just take him in. Another one, number 51. Now, there's one more question Fraser asked me, and I'm going to finish very quickly on this. How are they doing at building teams and planning for the future? Well, my first comment is not that well, many of them, because it's really tough in these communities. So we talk about bringing people on to help you. But what's motivating those people to say yes? I could take you to Worku, and I could take you to 3 people that Worku has invested significant time in Ethiopia to bring them onto his team into leadership, and every one of them turned out to be corrupt. As soon as they get near the money starts to disappear. And I could take you incident after incident with our existing partners where they've tried to bring on people, but it's failed because of the motivation of those. And they thought they were great people, but it hasn't worked out. And often, our guys, we have to have long conversations with them because most of them are entrepreneurial and they're not that good at planning for the future. They're really just energetically dealing with the issues of today. And so, as some of the other guys have shared, we have to have those conversations. Some are bringing their family members into leadership. And you might say, well, that's nepotism, but it's not a bad thing in most cases, because they get the values from birth, from young, and they understand where mum and dad are coming from. And so in many cases, this is a positive thing. There's 1 or 2 cases where it's not, but in most, my observation, it's a positive thing. The next thing, they're investing in training and education. This is a key. It's not the only thing, but it really is an important part. Most of them have education as part of their process somewhere along the line. And this is important, that education stays as part of the solution, if you like, to poverty and to sustainability. Young people growing up who are educated, they bring all sorts of things into partnerships that weren't there unless they were educated. I don't have time to share the example there. The other thing is trusting God. And sometimes there's a bit of a rocky balance or a tricky balance there between trusting God and responsibility. Some of them will say, I'm trusting God because they don't want to be responsible. But where both of those things go together, it's a really powerful combination. And literally, I mean, I was with a partner in Jordan, Isam, just a few days ago, and we were talking about all these refugees that are coming across the border from Syria and Iraq, still flocking over from Iraq, 5,000 a week. Many of them Christians. And so we're sitting there, and he's saying, he's in tears, talking about these people that are coming across the border. And, well, you know, I'm thinking about it strategically. Well, you won't be able to help anymore, will you? Oh, yes, we will. How come? Well, we'll trust in God for it. Well, it's a bit hard to answer, respond to that one in a way that's going to really encourage him, but, yeah, well, if he's got the faith, then I'll stand with him. Last one on there. They're starting movements, not just projects. And this is really important. You start a movement, bring in leaders, you've got a future. If you just start a project, often that isn't sustainable. It just to stay like it is. And so those that understand this really do have a future. Don't have time to do the last bit, Fraser, although I will answer one question. I'll give one response. What happens when people in the field don't build sustainability? Of course, Fraser put a little note there for me, which you haven't got, not our partners. I won't just refer to that last bit there. Their ministry becomes an organisation, so they start paying people, and it's all over. I hate to say this, but you know, Fraser talked about it last night. You start paying people to do ministry, and it becomes a job. And the people like Tiraja move out into another suburb up the road because it's a nicer area, and the whole thing's over. So we're looking for people who are so embedded in there they don't want a salary. In fact, some of them will refuse it. The costs go up. You know, an organisation can't deliver care, love, empathy, and what the poor require. An organisation cannot be a person. And if you want to break cycles of intergenerational poverty and abuse, somebody has to put themselves in the cycle. An organisation can do that. We know that in New Zealand, don't we? Mm-hmm. Where we set up organisations and we fire money at the problem, and it just gets worse. Last slide there, Fraser. What happens if they don't build sustainability? Future generations, they never experience the dignity of being self-reliant.